In this lesson, we'll talk about painting textures in Mudbox. Now, some of this information we've already kind of gone over, and some of it will seem very similar because the painting tools are similar to the sculpting tools in many respects. Especially we come over here in the properties, you're going to find some very similar things here. And so we've already gone ahead and created a paint layer for this. We've got that layer here. We've gone ahead and filled it with white. Okay, I actually want to make a sort of give this a darker color, so we're going to come over here to our color swatch and choose a color. There are a number of options for us to be able to pick colors. In the color wheel, you can see we've got a ring, spectrum. We can choose colors from a particular image. We can go into blend. So there are a number of ways that we can come in here and start to pick our colors. We can also come down and pick them numerically based on the RGB values or the HSV values, and then we also have color palettes that we can work from. So I want to get kind of a desaturated blue gray as to kind of fill this in, because I don't really want a lot of white going on in here. So maybe we want to add some darkness to this guy. So we can say done on that. We can also sample colors. If we hit I, you can see our eyedropper comes up. We can also choose the eyedropper here to sample colors. Okay. So with our paintbrush selected, you can see that we've got the same controls with B to increase or decrease the brush size, M to increase or decrease the strength of our painting. We can mirror it as well, and then we've got the same options for using stamps, the stamp spacing, steady stroke, fall off, and all of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn on a stamp to kind of break things up a little bit. We'll use this stamp, and we can come in here and start to paint over this. We can also, again, use our flatten to really quickly paint across this. If we want to just darken up that entire thing, we can do that. Okay, and then when we're done, we can go ahead and unflatten from UV space. Okay, we can come in now and get something that is maybe a little bit darker and even more desaturated. Let's get another stamp, and we can start to break this up, increase our strength here. You can see I've got randomize on so that it gives me a nice splotchy look that really lends itself to something organic like this. Okay, in some cases you may not want that, but if you're adding dirt to something, or if you're painting something organic like this, using the stamps with some randomization will kind of help you out, because you don't have to worry about going in and really creating all of that variation manually. Kind of some of that work's done for you here. Okay, so we can do that. There's also an airbrush that we can use. If we use the airbrush, it will give you a little bit of a kind of a softer look if you want to use that. We've also got the ability to erase paint from our particular paint layer. You can see if I erase that paint, it goes all the way back down to the color of the actual material. So it's taking all of that data out of our paint layer. So in this case, I don't want to do that. Coming up in the next lesson, we'll talk about the difference between erasing and using layer masks, and how one can be a little bit better for us than the other. You can also use a pencil if for some reason you need to add some really fine work, line work there. You can do that. Okay, so we just want to come in here and get some color variation, so we can maybe sample this color. We can come in and shift it a little bit. We can come down here and shift it as well to get a little bit of a different look, to kind of come in and add a little bit of variation to it. If you want to come in and add maybe a little bit more in on the green side, come in and drop that in. And really, you just start to layer these things on top of each other, and you really start to get some nice variation in the color. And again, just using the stamp to kind of randomize that. Okay, maybe we want to lighten this area up down here, and so we can come in with a color, sample that color, and instead get something that's a little bit lighter. Come in and with maybe a smaller brush size, start to lighten that up a little bit. Okay, just underneath there. Okay, we've got our symmetry on, our mirroring, so that's taking place across both sides, and we can just kind of lighten up the underside of our dinosaur a little bit. Again, all this is on this single paint layer, which is using these UVs. So typically, for the most part, we're going to be using UV-based textures. We can also, in Mudbox, use PTEX, which will allow us to paint without having to have UVs. We'll look at that in an upcoming lesson here. I just want to kind of drop this in and kind of lighten that up a little bit. We can also think about other areas of the model. We don't just have the skin. We actually have things like the eyes, where we can come in, take the stamp off. Let's maybe get a more of a yellow color. Dial our brush size down and start to come in and paint the eyes. Okay, we could come in here, and if we want to clone through this, we can kind of clone that back up to the side so we don't have that yellow coming through. Give us a little bit of variation there. Okay, we can also use stencils to paint, and let's go ahead and go over to the Mudbox community and let's check this out. So what I want to do is go back here, and let's just go into the library, go into stencils, and I'm just going to do a search here. So I'm going to search for rhino because I know I've got some similar looking skin. And so let's go ahead and get maybe this stencil, and so we'll go ahead and click on that, download it as a stencil. That's going to be loaded up for us in our 3D view. And so instead of painting through this, if I were to go in and actually just use this with the paintbrush, so come in here and with the paintbrush, and I've got yellow selected. I'm just kind of painting with it yellow, but what I want to do is actually paint the color information of this photograph onto the model. So to do that, I'm going to use projection. I'm going to choose a white color. All right, and now I'm going to kind of move this in position where I want to start painting, and then I'm just going to start painting in here, and you can see that I'm actually painting that color photograph onto the mesh. I go ahead and make this a bit smaller. We kind of get the right size ratio going here, and you can see I can sort of paint through this. Now if I dial down the strength, you can see that that's lighter, and it blends it more in with the rest of the texture that I've painted. So I could come in here, start to move this around and paint a little bit. And it's nice because you get a lot of information with these photographs that would be a little bit harder to get if you're just painting manually. It'd take a little bit longer at least. So you can see I can kind of just paint this through, move this around to get different areas hit. Come in here. And so this projection is a really nice way of doing that, getting that photographic detail onto our model. And when you combine this with the ability to edit your stencils, then you can really start to get some nice results, because you can take the time and edit your stencils so they match up a lot better with your model before you start painting. Think about painting a human face, and you're able to take the photograph and warp it to match the face that you've got, so you can now take that highly detailed face picture that you have and just paint it right onto your 3D model, and it'll bake that down as a texture using the UVs that you've got. So you have the ability to really add a lot of speed to your workflow and get some really nice results by using these stencils. So you can see just by painting through this with a low intensity here, I'm able to blend this with the underlying color. Now if I wanted to come in and just paint this totally through, I could increase that strength and come in and just paint it through. Okay, but I want to blend it a little bit more. Alright, so you can go ahead and play around with that, get a nice base texture going. And then in the next lesson, we'll take a look at what happens when we start to add more than one paint layer. So right now we're just working with a single paint layer, but we can start to add more diffuse layers, but also layers to drive things like specularity, things like opacity, different channels that are associated with this material. So we'll go ahead and start to take a look at that in the next lesson.